Welcome, future masters. Oh, the question is, do we check him? Looks like you probably do. Check here. King b5. I don't know, it doesn't really look right to me. The thing is here, is it king b5, king g4, king g6, king f4. I don't like that move at all. Oh, you have this check here. What does this do? Forces him to there. Ah ha ha, grasshopper. This is the move. See, the thing is, when your king is in front of the king, in front of the pawn, it's a win. This is a forced win, which is why it stopped. That's why I said queen to f6 check is not the right move, because he's going to get into a defensive position. You'll see this here momentarily. If I played queen f6 check, queen takes, pawn takes, king g4, king g6, king f4, and he's drawing. So I know that this move is not correct. We do want to trade queens, but only if we can get a winning position. A position that we know is won. So that means that it strengthens our ability to calculate when our opponent doesn't resign. So here I know this is winning. I know this is a won position and have done the work to do so. So this is how you get this answer. Oh, an amateur, eh? Well, here's a good question for you. Holy moly. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So he's in the square of our passed pawn. So pushing this is not helping us at this moment. We need to go here to take this guy summarily. And what happens is we want to go here. I think if he pushes this, we push here. I don't know, man. And he pushes to, what do you call it, 6. We go to 6. He pushes to 7. We could go to 7. And he could go to 7. And then I would queen. He could queen. This has got to be the only move here. 5. Taking is a mistake. It draws. So we have to push it. If his king moves after this pawn, then we push with check. If he takes our pawn, it's stupid. We push again. He's blown it. So we need him to make a move. We're threatening to just take this pawn and then defend this and just win. Here, he could go here. There's a possibility that b4 is the right move. b4, king e3, king g6. And now pushing this pawn, he just drops this pawn. He has no support to recapture. And he cannot capture both of these pawns. If he plays to here, king to e4. Oh, if I go b4, king e3, pushing the pawn won't help him because I would move and queen. So b4, king e3, king g6. If he pushes the pawn, I take it. If he comes forward to challenge this pawn, I push here. He can't take this pawn because he's out of the square of this pawn. So b4, king e3, king g6. Now if he goes after this pawn, say king d4, we take this, and we're going to take this guy too and cash this guy. I don't know, this seems a little better than just king g6 because e5 is somewhat strong. It's more complicated. I don't like it. King G6, E5. We push, he pushes, and it becomes very dangerous. I don't like it. There you go. This is why I've said it many times. I am a master and then some of king and pawn endgames. I shred those, as you see, with good results. There's a lot of tricks you can know, but on the king and pawn endgame, there's a finite number of tricks. So it's not as difficult as some of the other ones, like queen and pawn, super nasty. But king and pawn, the tricks of king and pawn endgame are very important because they apply to other endgames as well, especially endgames that transfer from piece endgames, where the pieces get traded off, and then it's king and pawn. So it's like when you have a multi-stage rocket, you always need that stage 1 booster. And the king and pawn endgame is like the stage 1 booster of a multi-stage rocket. No matter how many stages, 2 or 3, that you have in your rocket, you still need the main booster to get you off the launch pad. And that's what the king and pawn endgame is. Mastery of king and pawn endgames gives you powers to play other endgames better, even if you haven't studied the specific scenario. Because there's mental discipline that you have learned and apply. You have to learn these little ideas like I showed you here. This was a good one, and it was not obvious. Like I said, my original idea was to go here, but this E5 move is a nasty move. Well, nasty, I mean, I think it probably draws. It's very difficult, and it's very difficult. And the fact that I played B4, this is what it helps you when this computer with this. When I played B4, it's the correct move because it wins. The other one either draws or wins in a much more convoluted and longer way that offers you chances to screw it up. This one I calculated it, as you saw, quite accurately because of visualization, but understanding what we need to do. So B4, we must force him to make the decision to go after the square of the pawn here, which we did. Now we're going to kill his passer. There's nothing he can do about it. At F4, he was close enough to do this E5 business. But this is the thing where you have to know E5 move now is no good. It loses by force. If he plays E5, I will take it with impunity. It doesn't matter if he goes to E4 or if he goes after this pawn, whatever. But if he goes to E4 threatening E5, he can never take that pawn. E4, king takes pawn. If he takes this pawn, it's a queen. It's just like when you have, if I had a black pawn here on C5 and these are gone, the king goes in here and goes, ha ha ha, now it's, your move. You make a move, any move you want, it doesn't matter. He can't take the backwards pawn because the forward pawn cruises. And that's why I pushed this, forcing him. He didn't have time to play E5. Okay, well, let's look at this again. B4, E5 just absolutely loses to B3. You don't have to be a grandmaster to figure this out. Now, you don't want to check him and do it. Actually, that would work too. E5, check, loses. Even better. Both of those moves lose to B3. I mean, E4 loses either to B3 or pawn takes pawn, check, B3. So he was forced to track down the runner. So we go after his runner because we have this. He's dead on the next move. He's committed himself. He doesn't have this waiting move, like I said, of e5, because we'll just take it. And we're going to queen one of these two pawns. Chop his runner. We go after his last remaining pawn, which is the other blocker. And he's one move short of getting back to defense. Oh well. So, mastery of king and pawn endgames. Of all the endgames, it's the easiest one series to become a master player. And like I said, of all the endgames to play, it's the one you should work on the first, because it is the tree trunk, the roots of the tree, where all other endgame moves eventually trickle down to king and pawn endgames. I mean, that's a oversimplification, but there's truth to it. So work on king and pawn endgames. Look at my problems that have king and pawn endgames. Those things are awesome, and that will make you do this. I've done stuff like this in tournament games. When I played in the US Amateur Team Championship, I met a guy. I played in New York Open one time. You know, just my friend and I went to go do it before I had kids. So we went and did it, and, you know, good experience. Met this guy there from Florida, really super nice guy. And so he invited me to join his team. I'm like, oh, you know, I'm not going to turn that offer down. So went there. They, you know, their team had won it one time before. And so I joined their team, got in, you know, first round game, got to a king and pawn endgame. And I need to pull this one out because this is one I've never seen since. I won a king and pawn endgame that had a move that I had never seen the concept ever at the time. This is like, it's actually about a month, this month actually, I think it's 30 years ago. In my mind, I still remember the move I played. It was awesome. It was the only move that won the king and pawn endgame, and it was so not obvious. So I need to dig that out. And that's one of the things I have to do, is I have to make a video of the story of that tournament. So the spoiler for you guys that hung around this video is that I joined their team and we won the South Division. We won the South Division. So it's like going to Final Four basketball in college and winning your region, you know, the South region. That's what we won. We won the South region. So that's how pretty awesome that it was. We didn't win the whole thing. Yeah, well, you know, you get to the Final Four, it's awesome. So king and pawn endings, man, I'm telling you, they're awesome. Like the video, comment, see how far you got or what you did. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. You get more of these killer lessons, I'm telling you. I make players strong, and I have a record of doing that. You follow my stuff, you're going to get better. It's just that simple. So you guys know what to do. I'll talk to you later. What is this? 1840.